What's up, guys? We're still planning things as we start the recording. Um,
As always.
real fluid situation here. We are the Unqualified Film Bros. We're here to talk about probably the biggest release of 2022 so far. We are talking about The Batman. So, what do you guys think?
I dug this one. I think it was a very good film. I walked out of it and it's like I need time to fully think about it. But I walked out of it and I still feel that it might be the best depiction of Batman on screen. Not saying the movie is the best Batman movie, but just this might be the best Batman on screen for me. Like,
All right, Declan liked it, so end of episode.
End of episode.
Done. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
I think I agree with Declan that I mean it draws a lot on like great comics like The Long Halloween, Year One. And they're always dealing with like a sort of darker side to Batman that I think they really captured. Obviously, the Nolan films can be dark, but it's a different type of a dark. It's the darkness surrounding Batman and Bruce Wayne, which is like, yeah, I mean, sure, you go out and fight criminals, but like some of the best comics I think delve into the fact that like it's partly for him too. It's a coping mechanism for him. It just, and the foil obviously is the Riddler. Like what he's doing is a coping mechanism for himself as well. They're both doing what they do, and saying like, it's for the good of the city, but really it's for themselves.
Ben, to your point, I think it is a coping mechanism for Bruce Wayne to be Batman, and we see that reflected in the fact that he is Batman and not Bruce Wayne for about 90% of the film.
Yeah.
Even when he's Bruce Wayne, he's still wearing like the mask, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I kind of like that about the film because I often feel, again, this isn't a diss, it makes sense. I kind of feel like for many Batman films, like Batman himself is often in it less than Bruce Wayne. Well, not always, but like oftentimes villains can kind of take over the spotlight to an extent. And I really appreciate that. I felt like this one had Batman himself at front and center for like so much. Obviously, Catwoman as well.
Yeah.
But still, I felt like that honestly was a change of pace, surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
And again, another reason why I think it worked well for me.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of the detective part of Batman, which is something that we haven't really gotten up until this point in really any portrayal of Batman and or Bruce Wayne, to be quite honest. But he really was involved in sort of like the procedure of going to find the Riddler. He was the one at the forefront, teaming up with Jeffrey Wright's what was he, Lieutenant Gordon?
Lieutenant Jim Gordon.
Yeah, he was
detective first and then lieutenant, I think.
But I really like that side. I think it was a new interpretation, and I think it was done well. I was telling George,
I'm the world's greatest detective.
He was the world's greatest detective. Because I was telling George, there were a few jumps in logic, where I couldn't quite figure out where he made those leaps, but for the most part, it was a great way to represent the character on screen, and I like that.
I think he still sort of need to, just to tag onto that, he needed to learn also like the detective skills. Like, I mean, he got some things, but he also didn't get other things. He needed a lot of help from Alfred and stuff. And, both him and Gordon got things wrong, like interrogating Penguin. And I think it's the mistakes that really shows like he really hasn't fleshed this out yet. And just quickly going back to, that he is the Batman for most of it. It's sort of long been established that Batman is really who Bruce Wayne is. Bruce Wayne is the alter ego, like, and that's what he's sort of figuring out in this film too, which is like, he's like emotionless as both Batman and Bruce Wayne, just because that's actually who he is. The Playboy Bruce Wayne comes out because he realizes that it's actually useful to have, this like deceptive, charm, like he's an idiot, he's just a rich, playboy, doesn't know any better. And why he's always like, having late nights and stuff. I think the movie really, without going hard onto the, Bruce Wayne, I think it sort of shows like what's missing from his character, the full character that he will become.
And that's coming, right? That's coming in future Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman movies. You didn't need to see the full evolution of Bruce Wayne in this first movie. One, because they're getting sequels. Not confirmed yet, but they're gonna get sequels with how well this film performed. But also, Bruce is in year 2 of being Batman. He's in his early 30s. It's not like we're seeing late 30s, early 40s Batman, or even later on. We're seeing a very, very inexperienced version of the character. And Ben, you're absolutely right that he's got to see how his two lives can coexist.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the character arc that, we've seen Batman, like the Nolan trilogy is a great example. We've seen Batman starting his arc in the middle of the story. And I think this film, while it's not an origin story, which I love that they didn't flash back and show him falling into a cave with bats. That backstory has been told more times than the Bible. All right. But the way that they told Bruce's story, or that they're telling Bruce's story, is that he's going to be a rookie. He's going to be this novice in the balancing of his two lives, and as being Batman, as being a vigilante. So you've got to see Batman take this arc, and we're starting earlier on the arc than we have in previous iterations of the character. And I think that was a really, really good place to start. And credit to Matt Reeves for, one, taking Ben Affleck's script when Ben Affleck left the project and reworking it into a younger version of the character. But two, having a Batman fan helm the project. Because you get a generic Hollywood director, and he's going to make a solid Batman film, but he's not going to make this character as strong as he was in this performance.
I need to give credit still to, clearly he was a fan, because he took very heavy comic inspiration from year 1, and The Long Halloween is like one of the most noir-esque comics that they do with them, where it's very much just a complete mystery.
It felt so much like classic film noir.
Yeah,
which I loved about this.
Yeah. I think
just one more thing, with year 1, if I remember correctly, one of the person that really helps him become a good detective is Jim Gordon, when he was a detective himself before he rose up, before he became who he was, and it's really before Batman became who he was, because he is most famous for being really smart and really good at detecting things. DC Comics, Detective Comics. That was the basis. So I was really glad that they went back to those roots, because that was something that really never touched upon in the previous movies, Tim Burton's movies, certainly not the Adam West, whatever, Nolan's films. They don't really deal with the mystery. And he's really kind of, isn't that dumb per se, but he's a lot smarter in this movie than he has been portrayed in the past.
Yeah. Go ahead, Declan.
I gotta say, I also appreciate how well constructed the world is. Like depicting Gotham City is always an interesting thing. Like the Nolan films, like basically flip flop between like stylized, interesting depictions and just regular modern city.
It was Chicago.
Yes, like just literally Chicago, Illinois, and all that. Not that that's wrong or anything like that, but it can be. There's a lot of potential to be gained out of making an interesting Gotham City, and I felt like this was a very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you take away Gotham Square Garden, which was kind of lazy.
It was a little bit, but like Gotham is supposed to be this school of despair, and I think maybe the Tim Burton movies got some of it right in terms of just like
They
look,
nailed it.
but the Nolan
Nailed
films didn't. But this one I think hit the right balance. Like it feels a lot like the TV show Gotham in that sense, where it is a realistic city, right? You can move in and out of streets and alleyways, and there's lots of dark corners that are built for crime and built for Batman. But this was just done on such a bigger scale and really done well.
And just going back again to the comics, like it draws a lot from the comics, even to the point where I think it was year one, where they got a very much a darker palette for the comics, which is very clearly, inspired. Like they took some of the story, but they also took the aesthetic. And year one was also like trying to make a lot more of a realistic Batman too. And you really get that, like with the cars. He doesn't have crazy, ridiculous gadgets in this movie. And I think that's part of the inspiration. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong thing. I think that's the wrong way to look at like a Batman film or most superhero films. Because there are so many different runs of comics. Certainly like in DC with Flashpoint, you get a different character every time they reboot things. That like the Tim Burton film works, Nolan films work, all of them. As long as they're drawing from like an inspiration, I think they do fine because they're drawing on an actual comic run.
Yeah, and I think I also appreciate how it all, like, this is a weird way to put it, but for me it all felt like natural. Like the inspiration felt like it really all the inspirations went with the story well, if that makes any sense. It didn't feel like they're like, oh, we have to take this part because they want it and we'll just include it. It's like they took it because they felt like it improved the movie. And
yeah,
appreciated that. Like you're saying, it's made by someone who truly loves.
Yeah, no, there's completely nothing wrong with taking inspiration from the comics. That's what you should do if you're making a comic book movie.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think they did it very well. And again, The Long Halloween, it's got a lot of pieces, not just the detectives, but like the plot arcs. There's a heavy focus on Carmine Falcone and the relationship that he has with Thomas Wayne.
The first line of dialogue that Batman has in the film is October 31st. I forget what day of the week it was, but day of the week, October 31st. So, Long Halloween.
Also, like I think also I gotta bring up. I think we should talk about it. I feel like this was a really good cast here as well.
Yeah.
I think that like, so I feel like so many of people were doing. I wouldn't think they would do a bad job, but I felt like so many people did a much better job than I was even expecting them to. Like Robert Pattinson, like I said, I think he might be one of the best depictions of Batman on screen. I feel like I was expecting him to be good, but I feel like he really nailed it. And also Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, like he went real hard on it, and I think it paid off. Swimmingly.
Yeah, and I like that he's not completely put together like Batman, like they're both sort of learning the ropes. And there's plenty of times in the comics where both Batman and Gordon like do something stupid, That's just the nature of the characters. And yeah, I got to tag on the Robert Pattinson. I saw a lot of people complaining like, oh, it's Twilight Robert Pattinson, moody, no emotion. But
look at him playing a bat adjacent character once again.
Yeah.
He also hated his role in Twilight too. So that also, like, he rags on that. On those films and that franchise.
This is a very like specific performance. I think he is doing it on purpose. And going back, like he's wearing a mask and like they set it up a lot of times in the film. Like he has overcome everything, overcome his own fear of death. He doesn't care about anything, probably doesn't even care about his own life, the city, but he does care about one thing, which is Alfred. And you see that in the film. He gets angry when he knows Alfred's in trouble. You don't see that no matter whether he's Batman or Bruce, you can see like his emotion either way, but other times he's emotionless. And if you like read some of the comics, if you watch any of, the animated stuff, Bruce is very cold, and that's something that everyone notices, even the other superheroes. He's very, very cold, to the point where, he'll come up with contingencies for all of his friends, just in case, even come up with contingencies for himself. He is a mathematical, thinker. He does not use a lot of emotion, but every now and then, some of it comes out.
Well, it all comes to a head, the emotion and the, strictly emotionless sides of Bruce and Batman come together in the third act of this film when he's trying to deduce what the Riddler's plan is. You know, the sins of my father and the renewal fund rather, and everything else that's tied in with the DA and the mayor and the commissioner. He's trying to put it all together, but he's got this personal stake in it, which is something that I think it really works for this version of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and certainly the relationship he has with Falcone, he's more willing, he's more willing to believe Falcone than his own the integrity of his own father. If you didn't catch that,
and what a performance.
Really,
I'm sorry, but John Turturro as Carmine Falcone was outstanding, and his son works for DC.
Really?
So yeah, I read that right after I saw the movie. So he got inspiration for his portrayal of the character from the source. So
I when I first saw
he's got so much range as an actor. So just seeing him in this role was awesome.
When I first saw him, I was like, what? And I was always taken aback, kind of, because it was I wasn't expecting him in the film, and I was like, what's he doing here? But he really sold himself.
Yeah.
And also another person I got to bring up, who, speaking of Falcone, which I think we should probably bring up, I'm gonna go on a limb and say I would say even more strongly than this might be the best depiction of Batman. I would say this.
Don't say it.
But you're gonna disagree? You're gonna no. I'm not gonna say what you think I'm gonna say. No, we'll talk about him as well. No, is this the best depiction of Catwoman? I'm kind of thinking it might be. What do you think?
Not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to talk about another character from Batman Returns, but we'll get into that in a minute.
I knew exactly where he was going with that.
No, I thought he was going with the Penguin.
Yeah.
Before you two, Ben and Max, before you hopped on, we were talking about the Penguin.
Yeah,
we'll talk about
the Penguin is the best movie depiction. I know, Danny DeVito was fun, but it really is. It fits a lot more. I
got to see more of Colin Farrell's Penguin before I'm ready to make a call, because Danny DeVito is perfect in Batman Returns.
That is true.
But to Declan's point, Michelle Pfeiffer is still my favorite Catwoman.
You still say Michelle Pfeiffer?
Zoe Kravitz is a close second after this film. I really enjoyed her performance. I thought she played the character with a lot of nuance. And I think that is the strength of this character, is she also has a personal stake in it, especially because of her alter ego, Selena Kyle, wanting to protect Annika, who was, pictured with the mayor and is involved in the conspiracy too. Zoe Kravitz gives a fantastic performance here. And I think maybe we'll see her again. Obviously, the film didn't kill her off.
I hope so.
But in the same case, and it's strange that I'm saying this about characters that only appeared in one of Tim Burton's films, but I need to see more from both Zoe Kravitz and Colin Farrell before I'm ready to say that they're better than Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito.
I get it.
I don't know. Either of the Catwoman, I wouldn't say. I don't know. It's tough. I still feel like something's always missing. I don't think it's necessarily Zoe Kravitz's fault. I think there was too much going on with this movie. Catwoman felt too much. for me at least.
Oh yeah.
Given all of the history that we're dealing with Wayne, with Falcone, with the Riddler, adding Catwoman in there, especially because she's the daughter of Falcone, it was a lot. And there were parts where at the end of the movie I felt like it could have been shorter. That's the only thing I'll say.
I agree with that. I was telling George that there were like 4 different times that I thought the movie was going to end.
Yeah.
I mean, I did see it at 8:00 on a Sunday, so it was almost 11 by the time it was after 11 when I got out of the theater. So
That's on you.
Apart. Well, it was the only time I could see it. It was the only time that there were tickets. But yeah, it was definitely a long movie, and it felt long. It wasn't like No Way Home, where it was a long movie, but it was enjoy. I mean, but it's also a different style of movie. It's much heavier. And to the movie's credit, it for the most part, I would argue it kept its pace pretty well. There were some moments there, especially in the second act and the third act for sure, but like everything was cohesive. Like the story made sense throughout, and that is something that I can't say for every single Batman film that I've seen, not even the best ones.
I will just quickly say, I just purely because it was funny to me, you saying that reminded me of, to Ben's point about like if Catwoman was too much. I saw a joke somewhere to the effect of like, or someone said a joke I forget who, but to the effect of like, if you took Catwoman out, this would have like the lowest number of female lines in a Batman movie, which is sort of an impressive feat, or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. It said joke.
It's more because of how focused around Batman and the Riddler is supposed to be the foil. It seems like Catwoman is sort of like an extra like half foil. It's like she's sort of like Batman in a few ways, but she is not privileged. She needs to actually like make money. She can't just go around fighting crime.
Well, she says that to Batman in late in the film. She says, "Sounds like you grew up rich."
Yeah,
which I thought was, obviously she doesn't know Bruce Wayne, she knows Batman, but like, that's something that comes across in Batman's treatment of this case.
I just felt like
his approach comes from that perspective of having the material wealth.
What Catwoman. Catwoman.
Ben created a new DC character tonight.
No, that's a pre-existing.
Yeah.
Don't say it too loud, otherwise Zack Snyder's gonna make a movie about it.
But a lot of like her points, and I think the point of her character is to sort of be like that. She had to struggle to survive and stuff. She's sort of the same. It's like I'm used to there being a foil and then the protagonist, but there's 3 in here. But Catwoman didn't fill an equal role. But if you think about everything Catwoman is, she's sort of an orphan. Carmine Falcone just let her go, and she's telling Bruce Wayne or Batman like, "Oh, you're rich." She's reinforcing the same things the Riddler's saying. That's why I felt like when you had those scenes, I felt like I had already gotten the development for Bruce Wayne and Batman. And Catwoman, I just don't know how much she evolved. I mean, by the end, I guess, but I don't think that's really the true arc of Catwoman.
She was still really jaded at the end of the film.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out. Nothing materialized out of it as much as I would have liked for the time she was on the screen. That I probably would have preferred you do. If you're going to include her, have her do a different role, I guess. I don't know. She just sort of filled the same role as the Riddler, right?
Maybe she's the foil for the Riddler.
Crazy.
The what of the Riddler?
Maybe Catwoman is the foil for the Riddler in Batman's life.
I guess so. But at the same time, I don't think
I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that is one perspective that could be taken of the characters.
Yeah, I don't know. There was just something. If it's not Catwoman, there just seemed to be some moments that took a long time. I don't know. The movie just felt long by the end, and maybe that's also the false endings and stuff. But I feel like you really needed to have the ending that they had with all of like, his followers coming out and doing the same thing. I feel like that's important to like the story, which is Batman thinks that he's, rising up to crime, but in fact he's inspiring it. I think that is the proper ending. It's just something needed to be cut there. That's all I'll say.
Ben, to your point, I've seen the film twice now. The first time, I loved the slow burn. I loved that it felt like a crime thriller, film noir.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like 3 hours in a really, really good way. And I think that the way that the film is constructed allows the way it develops to take the full 3 hours and not feel like it's dragging on. The second time I saw it, it felt long.
Mm.
And I really didn't.
I'm not saying that took away from the film.
Yeah.
But it did. The viewing experience, maybe it's just because I was anticipating plot elements that I knew were coming or what have you. But the way that the film played out over the course of my second viewing was, oh, this is a long film.
The first part, it didn't feel long, like the noir and stuff. I felt like the plot was really engaging.
Oh, yeah.
I think after a certain point, there was some point near the end, certainly when, the Riddler like turns himself in, that some parts just felt really long. Like the movie felt like it was going on too long at a certain point. That I didn't have any disagreements with, again, like the ending itself. But something needed to go there. I feel like it could have been, half an hour shorter, and conveyed the same ideas. I don't know. It's tough to like single out what I would cut out, but I do think it was too long.
Yeah,
I still love the film, but
I don't know what I would cut necessarily, but I can definitely point to a couple of moments that felt that where I remember thinking, oh, this is like long. And one of them is
Alfred and Bruce in the hospital.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
it was necessary for the plot, but there were no stakes to that moment.
Well, I think even the scene where he was helping the young girl get into the medevac or whatever from the arena. I get it again, right? It makes sense logically, but it could have been shorter. It might have been, you probably could cut it, but again, it all made sense, and that's why it's so hard for me, like Ben said, to just sit here and think about, okay, what would go? Because I don't know if there would be anything that I would say this has to go on, this has to make itself to the cutting room floor. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think Catwoman is. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think with her arc, there are a lot more things that are necessary, which I guess is why something about her I would cut, because the other options you have are like cut Batman or cut the Riddler. You don't really have a movie anymore.
Well, I mean, the Riddler was mostly absent for the second act of the film.
That's true.
It really honed in on Bruce,
but he was so
Gordon,
focused in
or
the
Batman
first.
And Gordon going after the Penguin and Falcone. It was about solving the mystery. It wasn't about going after the bad guy.
Yeah.
That said, and this is my transition into talking about the Penguin, because I do want to talk about him, one of my favorite characters in the film. The scene by the water, by the docks, where Batman and Gordon interrogate the Penguin, it came right around the time of the car chase, which was such a great sequence.
Oh, fantastic.
Not the best Batmobile we've ever seen, but you know, still a cool car. But that scene by the docks and that interrogation, it was a moment of levity in a dark scene. Because you've got this conspiracy, this very serious, people are dying situation, but you got Colin Farrell in a fat suit and makeup and scars and gold teeth saying, "Am I the only one who knows the difference between L and La?" It was,
and that shows like his mistakes, right? Both of them. They didn't even think about that.
And by the way,
if
you have not gone to rataalada.com, the URL, it is promotional material for the movie, but it reads like messages from the Riddler, like they show in the movie. So, rat with wings. A lot of things with wings in this movie.
I felt like I gotta give credit to Farrell and the makeup team in the sense that
you were expecting Daddy Penguin.
He looked like his makeup was, I would honestly say, was flawless. To the sense really that I thought he was genuinely someone who was fat and had a scar on his.
Yeah, that wasn't Colin Farrell. If you would
the way he talked too.
Picture, I would. I got you. He would not have been my guess at all. My guess probably would have been I don't even know. I mean,
he looks more like Richard Kind than he looks like Colin Farrell.
Yeah, that's who it is. Well done, Ben.
That's what I kept thinking. I was like, it looks like someone's wearing a Richard Kind suit.
No, it's at the very least, I unfortunately cannot speak on Batman Returns because I haven't. It's the one. It's one of it's the one Batman film that I think I haven't seen at this point. But so I am glad though that both of them are at the very least both this Penguin and this Catwoman. I would say they're both at bare minimum in contention with those two classic performances by
contention is a good way to put it.
What?
Contention is a good way to put it. Yeah. So
they're in the conversation.
Yeah. On the note of the cast, let's talk about Paul Dano, because we haven't talked really all that much about his performance as the Riddler. This guy, first of all, making him accessible to a modern audience by having him be this 4chan extremist. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for the follows. This guy's got 500 followers.
Could you imagine a bunch of people talking to a camera with a very small number of followers for long periods of time?
Yeah,
that's these guys.
We would do something like that.
But it's 500 people that clearly are continuing to come back, and that's dangerous. And I think
it's dangerous when it happens for the Riddler, but not dangerous when it happens for us. So please don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes.
There you go. Self-promotion from George right there.
Gotta build the brand.
But yeah, he was a overall very strong villain. I do think, unfortunately, Paul Dano gets typecast as kind of these loner characters, partly because he plays them so well.
Very good prisoners.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Paul Dano's performance is that it can be split into two very different versions of the same character.
Yeah.
When you've got the menacing, threatening, masked Riddler, and then he's taken into custody in the diner, and then he's in Arkham unmasked, sort of just this pale, no disrespect to Paul Dano, but kind of shovel-faced guy.
I thought you were going to say no disrespect to 3/4 of our podcast.
Something you want to say, Max?
Yeah, I just said it.
But I liked his performance across the board more the second time I saw it, because I was really focusing on it. The first time I saw it, I felt like he took a step down when he was unmasked
I
and
do
sort of became a little bit lesser. But again, you see him in that mask lurking in the shadows in that opening scene behind the mayor, and it's like, oh my god, this is so badass.
That was frightening. I felt this. So I see your point, George, but I also think that's part of the characterization, right? He has the confidence with the mask on. He has the anonymity. He has the power over his audience of 500 people. But when his mask is taken off, right, that's all gone. He's a social outcast that is not physically intimidating. He says that in the prison scene, I think. He says, my power is not strength. I can't fight. It's up here. And that's exactly what it is. But that doesn't mean that confidence is still there. That doesn't mean that he has control, even though he turned himself in, even though he, theoretically had that, he made that happen. He is a different character, I think.
Yeah, and I honestly thought that like it worked really well. You said like, he was less menacing when he took off the mask. Like you're saying, yeah, the mask is like part of his identity. But also I think it was really, really good acting when he realizes that Batman is not who he thought he was. He like projected onto him what he thought, of himself, essentially. He projected onto his identity. And it's sort of the same thing. Like they both realize that they've made mistakes, that Batman is, the Riddler thinks Batman is not who he thought he was. He's not as smart as he thought he was. He thought he was, his best friend, essentially.
Oh, you're really not as smart as I thought you were.
And he's really like disappointed too. Like he realizes he's messed up,
Yeah.
His whole plan was based on this, and he royally messed up. And similarly, it's the same thing with Batman, right? He realizes that he is really messed up and that he inspired a bunch of people. All of them saying, obviously, I'm vengeance. He realizes like the symbol he has become is just fear. It's not fear, fear for the criminals, but fear in general. People are afraid of him, even the people he helps, like the guy who the gang was going to beat up. They're afraid of him. That's something he really has to realize over this.
He's
and also
inspired fear in Gotham.
Yeah, and it ties back also like to Thomas Wayne and the renewal fund, which is that like that is part of the reason Gotham is the way that it was today, and Bruce Wayne neglecting his actual legacy helped create the corruption that became widespread in Gotham. He's just sort of ignoring parts of his identity and ignoring like the root of the causes, because he just wants to go out there and beat up the people who he imagines killed his parents. And same with the Riddler, it's the same thing, going back to my original point, it's for them. It's partly for the city. I'm sure that they have, that's part of their beliefs, is that they actually think, they're doing something. But the inspiration and the motivation is that their parents were killed. And I think they sort of apply that. The reporter, his name was Edward Elliot. I assume that was his father. He makes a big deal about him being an orphan. And the whole connection with the Wayne family, and how the seed for his fall to becoming the Riddler and having this miserable childhood is Thomas Wayne. And the renewal fund, same as like, that's why Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. So it all ties back to that.
Yeah.
No, that was my point.
Yeah. No, I will just quickly say I agree with that, but I will just say, to defend an aspect of the film from earlier, I would say part of Catwoman's role in the movie is partially to help Batman find humanity that he's lost over the years of bitterness, like find that person, like part of his identity that he has been suppressing as a real like human being and all that. At least for me, you know, and all that. Just to build off of what you're saying, you know.
That's a really good analysis, Declan. That I hadn't thought about that. That's
Right.
profound.
Yeah, however, I feel like also Batman is helping Catwoman probably more so. If you think about it, I mean, Batman is continuously trying to prevent her from taking life so that she doesn't throw her own life away. Batman is fully willing to throw his own life away. Yeah, it's interesting. I see what you're saying. I'm not sure he really finds his humanity as much as he realizes that he's just sort of messed up. I don't think at the end he's got it like figured out. Like he doesn't have his humanity back. He just realizes that the change he's trying to make is not what he intended.
Yeah, he's got to find a new way to approach his.
It's not like he gave up. Honestly, like if Bruce Wayne really discovered his humanity, he'd probably give up the suit. It's it's established in a few comics. Like Batman is partially the reason why all these people come up. The Joker exists just to torment Batman. You know, that's his entire existence. Everything is based around Batman. And similarly, like going back to the renewal fund, it's all the instigation. The Wayne family has built and also destroyed Gotham, as they say. You know, Waynes and the Arkhams, they basically created Gotham.
Gotham's founding families.
They have also somewhat destroyed it. And because of their personal allegiance too, if you think about it, Thomas Wayne died, implied, because he was trying to protect his wife and his family, and he would give up anything. And then he realizes that he wasn't willing to cross that line. It's just the personal connections that sort of dooms the city. I think it's well set up. I don't know, is Batman better off? Yes, but it's not like he's solved everything. It's not like he's actually grown that much. I think he just realizes that he's made mistakes and is going to try and do a better job as Batman. But it's clear that he still has a lot of room for growing.
I think we have more to go with this version of the character, and I'll say that I'm excited to see where this version of the character goes. That's what I'll just say.
This version of the character and Matt Reeves' Gotham, because I know they canned the HBO Max series, which was disappointing. That was supposed to be with the GCPD or Arkham Asylum or one of the other. But this iteration of this world is really fascinating so far. So final thoughts on the Batman before we get into the last part of our episode?
Like I said, I kind of loved it. I kind of can't wait to see it again, which will be probably soon. I like I said, it might be my favorite version of Batman on screen. As I said at the beginning, I feel like this one threaded the needle of comic adaptation and realistic story well to tell the best story, and it could and gave us a fantastic version of Batman. And it's not flawless, but it's really, really good in my opinion.
I think the final thing I'll say is I really love the foil setup they have for the Riddler and Batman, and also all the corruption in the city, where I think it finally dawns on Batman that beating up a bunch of low-level thugs doesn't really do anything when the corruption is widespread throughout the systems that you're supposed to, that are supposed to take those thugs down. And in a really interesting way, the Riddler does more to take down the bad guys in Gotham than Batman does. And sure, maybe he tries to blow up the city and cleanse it, but he does take out a bunch of corrupt people.
I think having his goons go and commit a mass shooting in a stadium it's like that's a pretty fun. That's pretty.
I didn't say he didn't do anything wrong. All right, I'm not like, he didn't do anything wrong. I'm just saying he did happen to kill a bunch of people that were essentially allowing a lot of terrible things.
The mayor, the DA, the police commissioner.
Yeah, that they're all corrupt, just letting the Falcones run rampant. Falcone owns the city. Hey, he even kills Falcones. There you go. And my last point, the flood at the end reminded me of. There are a few things. It reminds me of Taxi Driver and the 70s, like Martin Scorsese cinematography. But one of the things that Travis Bickle says in that movie is like, one of these days is going to be a real rain that'll wash all these criminals away. That's exactly what Riddler's plan is, literally to wash away all of like the dirt and the corruption from the city. It's pretty smart. It's like Noah's flood or something.
Yeah. Max, you want to go or I'll go next. I'll go next. Yeah. Like Declan said, this is one of the best depictions of Batman we've seen, or at least I've seen. I feel like Batman is at his best when he's a detective, and he's a detective for almost all of this film,
80%,
basically up until the end of the third act. So I'm really excited to see what Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, especially Robert Pattinson, can do with this iconic character and the world of Gotham. And I really, really enjoyed the movie both times I've seen it. The second viewing didn't take it down a peg like I expected it might. And the last thing I'll say is, why does a guy who looks so much like Clark Gregg in the DA,
Gil Coulson,
Phil Coulson, it was Sarsgaard, our old buddy, playing the DA Gil Coulson. Mom, can we have Phil Coulson at home? We have Phil Coulson at home. Phil Coulson at home. Gil Coulson. So yeah.
I'm under a lot of pressure
Max,
right
over
now.
to you.
Yeah, not really going to add anything new. I'm probably just going to say everything that's already been said, but in a different way. The character was done really well. The movie was done really well. It was, like George said, iconic character, but it didn't feel tired. It didn't feel like a money grab. It felt like almost like a passion project for Matt Reeves. Like, this is something that he cares about. He loves Batman. He loves the comics. And so that passion really comes through, and that matters. Like, you can tell in the audience when a director, when the actors, when everything sort of comes together because there is love for the project itself. And that is just such a great way to make film. And I can't wait to see what happens next in Matt Reeves' version of the character, Gotham, and what stories he wants to tell us next.
Yeah. So The Batman is currently playing in movie theaters. It'll be on HBO Max very soon, which we're all very excited about. So now, as we wrap up here, we're going to do some rankings for y'all. We're going to talk about our top 3 Batman films. Ben, why don't you start us off as we go through here at the end?
Number 1.
You don't want to count them down?
Start 3.
I know number 1 and number 2. 3 is tougher. All right,
count 3, up.
No. I'll do it correctly, okay?
Hey, at least you're not starting with number 5.
I'll go 5, 3, then 1, and 2 and 4. You'll have to guess. I think number 3 is probably gonna have to go to Batman Begins. I really like that one. I love Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, even though he doesn't say his name right in that movie. To my knowledge, keeps saying Ra's al Ghul. But anyway, I think it's a
Semantics.
really good. It's a good setup. And I just overall like the film. I think it's just really well done. Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow is fantastic. I love him. It's a great actor right there. And the whole thing just, it works well. I love, the sly little comments from Alfred, like, oh, you can't even, lift the bookshelf up. What are you doing all those push-ups for? And yeah, it's good. Second one, I think it's probably going to be the Batman. I think it's probably one of the best adaptations that I've seen. It's a really dark take on the character, which I think is always a great way to go. There are a lot of different characters, Batman, a lot of different versions you can do. But I personally prefer, the dark, gritty Batman. I think it's a very interesting take on the character, because a lot of what he does is morally gray, even though he says, he doesn't kill people, doesn't use guns. He can be hypocritical. He has a lot of darkness, to him. And then number one, probably The Dark Knight. It's a great movie. I mean, everything about it. Eckhart is Two-Face, very good. Obviously, Heath Ledger, don't really know much about him. I mean, Christian Bale's a great Batman. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing else to say. Everyone knows it's a great film. That's it.
Cool. Who wants next?
Full call, George.
I'll go next.
Oh,
No one jumped on it. So I'm going to go three different versions, three different actor portrayals, three different directors for my top three. Number three, Batman Returns. I love the way that Tim Burton portrayed the city of Gotham. I think it felt like a comic book through a movie. I'm not in love with Christopher Walken's performance as Max Schreck, but Danny DeVito as Oswald Cobblepot and Michelle Pfeiffer as Selena Kyle, Michael Keaton as Batman. It's much stronger, in my opinion, than the first Keaton Burton film. But I just saw it for the first time not 2.5, 3 months ago. So it's a recent first viewing, but it gets into my top three. Number two is also a very recent first viewing. And I'm going to follow up with Ben here, The Batman. We've talked about it for the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes. It's a great portrayal of Gotham, great portrayal of the world, of the characters, of Batman. And like Ben said, going gritty, going dark, getting that detective work in there, the story of the film, really, really strong. And also, thumb drive, we haven't mentioned that yet, but
yeah,
had to get that in there. The number one, the second best sequel of all time, the best Batman movie of all time. I don't even need to say its name, The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I think I figured it out.
I will once again say who's got next, and one of you better pick up the ball.
I'll go. My third film is going to be, gosh, this is so hard. My third film is going to be the Lego Batman. Number two is, no, I'm just kidding.
Stick with that. That's
You
okay.
got me. You got
Who was
Will
that?
Arnett.
Will Arnett.
Yeah.
Yeah. It honestly is a
That's
good film, but
fantastic.
it's not number three. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's high. It's actually really enjoyable. But number three is the Batman. I think it will improve upon a second viewing. I like pretty confident in that fact, in that statement. Number two, Batman Begins. It's a great origin story. And it's our first portrayal, or sort of first introduction to Christian Bale's Batman and Bruce Wayne. He does it really well. And I think we all know where I'm going with this one. Number one is The Dark Knight. There's no question about it for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, we don't need to do Declan's because we all know Batman v Superman is his favorite Batman film.
Yep.
If you haven't read his Letterboxd review,
obviously, yeah. Now, okay, so first, I just want to give a disclaimer before I'm giving my ranking. I actually intentionally excluded the Batman because I felt like it's so recent that I feel like I can't quite like it's too recent to properly quantify it against the
So
other.
we all put it on our list, but you can't put it on.
Yeah, you know, exactly. So it's like that's the only reason why it's not currently on
it works for us, but it's too fresh for Declan.
Yeah.
And second,
too good.
these are I'm specifically doing my favorite rather than what I consider the best ones. So
Sure.
that being said, number 3, I'm gonna go with Batman the movie starring Adam West. I watched that.
1866.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh
I
my
think
God.
it captures it. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen Batman the movie, there's too many iconic moments that it's absolutely worth your time. You know, all that. Number 2, I'm going with the animated film Batman Under the Red Hood. I think it's a fantastic exploration of Batman's character and his relationship with Robin and all that. You know, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Number 1, it's The Dark Knight. Yeah, like of course it's gonna be The Dark Knight. Like I gotta just say for context, I literally did not see The Dark Knight until like when I was in college in like 2020, like 18 or something like that. Like years after it had come out, it was because
Same.
it's because it was so hyped up for me that I was like, I'm gonna be a cool person and I'm not even gonna see The Dark Knight because I don't need to.
Not same.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't live up to the hype or whatever. And then I saw it, and it without question lived up to the hype. Like not to say I was like intentionally not seeing it for that, but it was at least a little bit of my thought process. But I was wrong. The Dark Knight, it's cliche for all of us to put it at number 1, but it also just is the fact. It's a genuinely amazing film in all aspects of itself. Who could have guessed 4 male film bros would put The Dark Knight at number 1, but here we are.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to do it for us here. We will be back very soon with another episode. We're looking forward to the Oscars, so stay tuned for our Oscars content in the coming weeks before March 27th. But go see The Batman. It's in theaters. Have a good night. Timmy Chalamet for Robin.